back. Well, yes, indeed, Jijokunye joins us now to give his thoughts on this matter as well. Thank you for coming on, and happy holiday. I don't know how to drag you out today.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
But the way all of this is going, first you have this Indonesia matter, then the xenophobia, and all of a sudden our indigenous citizens all involved in both cases. Let's start off with this recent one in Indonesia. Well, yes, indeed, you have many people who are divided concerning how we ought to go about it, but many have also thought that, well, they've got their laws clearly spelled out. I mean, as much as when you get to the airport, and there's little Nigeria can do about it, even though some other countries went as far as recalling their ambassadors. What's your assessment of how we're approaching this case as a country?
Now, I think that as a country, we are not left with too many options on how to deal with this situation. As it's now turned out to be, we are merely playing a reactive role. I know that before now, there have been some interventions at the highest level. As a matter of fact, you recall that when the Indonesian high official, Prime Minister or President visited Nigeria, the President of the country, President Goodluck Jonathan, made a passionate plea for clemency or commutation of the death sentences. And on that occasion, the riposte from the visiting Indonesian leader was that they've got their laws, and that since they've got their laws, those laws will have to be carried out. Before now, one would have thought that having spent these years on the death row, perhaps eventually their incarceration would dovetail into commutation. I mean, some of them, one just sentenced this year, 16, 15, 20 years ago. And eventually now they have to be executed. And there was indeed a time in Nigeria when Mr. Aliso Agbako, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, tested the law by arguing all the way to the Supreme Court that once you place somebody on death row for that long, you ought not to execute him any longer. The Supreme Court rebuffed that. Well, it was a very topical issue. So, for me, we're left with little options, really, on how to deal with this situation. Yes, the argument has been that the laws of this country are clear. The harsh laws on narcotics and hard drugs, and that they are not only executing foreigners, they are also executing their nationals. They are executing their own people. And so, if they will execute their own people, why do we think that they should spare our own people who go to their countries and commit these offenses? And so for me, the way to go about it is not to continue to cry over those who have been convicted. We can continue to make a case for clemency and all that, even while we still have death penalty in our statute books here, which is also a big debate. Because what this issue has raised, in part, is the issue of the death penalty. Those who are, recalling their envoys, who are condemning this, the EU, they are doing so on the plank that death penalty ought not to be enforced any longer.
Is that what we were measured about it? Because we still have that in our statutes.
No, I have not heard Nigerians saying that. What Nigerians are saying is that, it's sentimental, please don't kill them, more or less. Because we still have the death penalty here. So if you have the death penalty in your statute book, rightly in my view, contrary to what many people will say, and we have to show for it, contrary to what is coming from the global north, the recent survey that was conducted in Lagos State, where 85% of the respondents said that they still wanted the death penalty to retain in their statute book. You have a situation whereby judges are encouraged to return the verdict on the death penalty. Prosecutors go to court. They still go to court on a daily basis for armed robbery, for example, and they ask the judex to impose the death penalty. So the judge does that. And then the government refuses to do his own bit because of one moratorium and all that. So when you know that that situation, why can't you go to your statute book and remove, expunge the death penalty from there, so that judges will no longer be sentencing people to death. So who carries the highest burden? The person who pronounces that somebody should be killed, or the person who down the road the signs the warrant? So which is one aspect of this debate. But what I've heard Nigerians say is that please don't kill them. It is not on the plank of death penalty is not justifiable. Because we have death penalty in our statute book here.
Now, do you also think that we've had a thorough conversation on this issue of the death penalty, for instance? Has Nigeria really had that conversation, or is just had in the realm of law? Because you still see cases of reluctance, you still see cases of disagreement. For instance, you recall that when the Edo State government was going to execute some of the prisoners who had been sentenced to death, it was a big issue.
And for those who are mouthing what the Western institutions are saying, for me it was not a big issue. For me, I broke rank with people on that occasion and said, you did right by signing death penalty. You also saw a situation where in some states, for some laws, they had proposed ensuring that the death penalty was the crime, I beg your pardon, was the time you're going to, or the price you're going to pay for certain crimes, and you find that the executives in those states were saying, no, we don't agree. It would seem that governments cannot just take lives at will. Do you think that we've really had that conversation within the context of religion, within the context of our society? It is an ongoing conversation, even in settled democracies. That debate is still raging, and I'm not sure that the debate will end very soon. So we've had some conversation on the propriety and the usefulness of the death penalty. There are a lot of people who have the view that the death penalty does not correct anybody, is vindictive, is retributive justice, and is cruel. And that there are international covenants, conventions, protocols that forbid this. But there are also people who are saying it's still part of our laws. Not only that it's part of our laws, it's also justifiable. It's just desert. If you kill, premeditated murder, and the law says that you should be killed, you have to answer to the consequences.
So your support was based on what? Was it based on what the law said, or you think that that's what the law should say?
For a number of reasons. One, that I'm a rule of law person. The law says this is the punishment for this. And people are charged to court. Prosecutorial resources are expended. The DPP's office hire lawyers who are paid to prosecute. These offenders are successfully prosecuted. Adjudicatory labor is part of it. The judge then returns a verdict, and the governor refuses to sign. Why? Because its moral codes do not accept that while in office for 8 years or 4 years, you sign the death penalty. That governor does not bait an eyelid. Stealing money. What moral code? And so you don't do it, and then you have people on the death row.
You just reminded us of...
So for me, there's a constitutional requirement that warrants that everybody does in the shade, does his job.
And it's not about morals, you say?
No.